Hi, and welcome to Mondays with Marlo. I am very excited about today's guest. This woman I've been trying to get on our show for months, and you've been asking for her, and I've been asking for her. So I've been relentless, and she's finally here. Dr. Laura Berman, the wonderful sex and relationship expert. I'm so excited that you're here.
I'm so excited to be here because, as I've told you, you've been like one of my idols for so long.
That's so nice. One of our producers said, maybe that's her sex tactic, that she's hard to get.
Yes, I always say to women, you don't want to play hard to get, you want to be hard to get.
That's
but that wasn't my intention.
No, I'm sure not. Well, we have so many millions of questions for you, and we only have a half hour. So I'm going to just try to get right into them.
Go for it.
Bryce from Ann Arbor. I see Bryce from Ann Arbor. She's right in there. Mm-hmm. My husband has been hinting that he'd like to have a three-way. We've always had a good sex life, but he's always been sexually curious. I'm not sure this is something I'm into, but I don't want him to look for it someplace else. Is there any advice?
Yeah, you know what? That's such a great question because this is something I hear from women all the time. It's the most common male fantasy, a threesome. It's something that very often comes up in a long-term relationship. And I'm really, my whole premise in general is like whatever floats your boat. As long as it's consensual, I don't care. But the one place where I tend to be more cautious, honestly, is with the threesome thing because I think I've maybe met through the years one couple who has done it successfully. Because almost always some jealousies come in, some conflict. You're thinking, is he or she still thinking about that person? Or someone is still thinking about that person?
Or are they getting more attention than me? That's what I'd be thinking.
Yeah, right. Or does he like her body better than that?
Exactly, that's what I'd be.
So you have to be the most superhumanly secure, not a jealous bone in your body, and it's not really, if you're going to be in a monogamous relationship, it's probably not a good idea.
I'm too Sicilian for that. I couldn't handle it. No way. Okay, but anyway, I hope that helped.
Yeah.
This is from Tina. My friend's boyfriend hits on me all the time, and I think he's a real player. My friend's crazy about him. Do I tell her, or do I keep my mouth shut? Help.
Yeah, this is a tough one because you do have to be prepared to, as the messenger, be shot, right? So if your girlfriend is really into this guy, she may not believe you. She may be angry at you. He may convince her that you really have a crush on him or something. And I see that happen all the time. But if she's really your friend and you really care about her and he is hitting on you, then I think you do have to tell her.
Oh, I'm so glad you said that. I agree.
Yeah, don't you?
Absolutely. Boy, I sure would want somebody to tell me.
Me too. That's what you have to think. Would you want to know?
Absolutely, I'd want to know, especially if I wasn't.
And even if she says she doesn't want to be your friend, she'll come back around as long as you're calm and do it in a loving way.
Right. This is from Stacy. I'm moving in with my boyfriend, and he's dead set against me bringing my vibrator. Oh, goodness. What a control freak. How can I explain to him in a nice way that sometimes a girl just needs to fly solo? Well said.
Yeah. Well, look, if, like Woody Allen says, it's having sex with someone you love. Right? But many men are threatened by this, and the main reason is because they imagine, mistakenly, honestly, that they're going to be replaced by the vibrator. And so what I try to explain to men is that yes, no human can compete with the intensity of the stimulation that a machine provides. But really, and I've done national research on what sexually satisfied women have in common, it is the intimacy and connection they feel with the person they're having sex with that most predicts for their satisfaction. The vibrator can't ask her how her day was, can't cuddle her, can't kiss her, can't comfort her. Right. Those are the things that really...
And isn't attractive.
And isn't really attractive. I mean, some might be attractive, but not attractive like he is. So he can't be replaced. And one way to kind of incorporate it in is to try to get a toy that you can maybe use together. So it's not only something that you do by yourself, but something that you can bring in together.
But there's something else here that
that he doesn't like it.
Well, that he's dead set against her bringing it. That just seems to me very controlling.
Yeah, right, and that's a red flag. You're absolutely right. That you want to be, because if he's controlling about that, he's probably controlling about a lot of things. So just be careful.
And insist on what you want.
Yes.
Okay, this is from Joanna T. I find myself sexually attracted to only a very specific type of guy, introverted and quiet. But pursuing a relationship with this type has led me to break up after breakup for me. So why is this? Is there anything I can do to change my type?
You know, that's tricky. I don't know why being with an introverted and quiet person would necessarily lead to breakup after breakup. I mean, I don't understand what that connection is, although there might be one. But it's interesting because there's been a lot of research done on this, that we have love maps that are sort of templates of who we're attracted to that are really developing until about age 7, and then they're more or less set. So you may, so if you find yourself repeatedly attracted to the same type of guy, it's probably part of your love map. If you're repeatedly attracted to a destructive kind of guy, it may be part of your love map, but also something that you're trying to work out from an earlier damage. So if you are continually breaking up, if this introverted shy guy is repeatedly emotionally unavailable to you, and that's why you're breaking up, then it's time to look at yourself and what wounds you're trying to heal through getting some guy who's not emotionally available to you to love you. If I can get this one to love me, then somehow I'm okay. And that's when you get into trouble.
That could very well be what introverted and quiet means.
Yeah.
This is from Marlene. My boyfriend watches a lot of internet porn. Sometimes I see him masturbating to it. Is this normal? And at what point does it become a problem?
These are good questions.
Yeah.
Very good. All right, so Marlene, here's what I think. There's a healthy place for pornography in a healthy relationship. And any woman who thinks that her man doesn't masturbate is fooling herself. Like, get over that, right? Because they do it, and there's nothing wrong with it. And many women feel like it's cheating or it's bad. It's not. If he is masturbating or watching porn to the exclusion of having sex with you, or isn't available to you, or it's getting in the way of your relationship or his ability to function or hold down a job, or he's doing it all the time and not doing anything else, then there might be a problem. But if it's done on a regular basis, he's not hiding it from you, it's not getting in the way of your sex life, I wouldn't worry about it. Maybe even join in if you're interested.
Right. That's good advice. Very well. See, you are good. I'm glad I waited and pursued you.
I was worth the wait.
Yes, definitely. This is from Alice. My 9-year-old daughter walked in on my husband and I having sex. How can we explain to her what we were doing in a way that is age appropriate?
Yeah.
Well, shouldn't they keep the door locked?
Yeah, well, that's the first thing, put a lock on your door. But, sometimes we forget. This happens often. And honestly, at 9, you should be talking to her about the changes that are happening in boys' and girls' bodies. Lots of girls are starting menstruation as early as 9. So these are conversations you want to have with her anyway. But if you're looking for just a quick and easy, what did you just see? You definitely don't want to pretend it didn't happen. You want to check in with her and say, do you have any, I know you walked in and you saw mommy and daddy doing something strange. Do you have any questions? Or if you just want to come up to her, one way that I tell parents to explain it is that, and this is a great way to get her sex education started, because you always want to set your context, your values around your sex education. So you say, when a man and a woman love each other very much and only want to be with each other, or when a man and a woman are married, or, insert your own values there, they hug each other in a very special way that's only for the two of them. And that's what Daddy and I were doing. And, you can leave it at that. And if she has more questions, you answer that, but you only answer what they ask very specifically. You don't go all the way down the path, because they will lead you, if you let them, by asking the question, well, so what kind of hugging? Well, what happens during the hugging? And then you slowly go from there.
Right.
I have a book actually called Talking to Your Kids About Sex.
Oh, great.
Which is a pretty obvious title, but it lays it all out.
At least we can find it.
Right.
This is from Stephen. Welcome, Stephen. We don't have a lot of guys here, so I'm thrilled to have you. Do you have any tips for keeping passion alive after marriage?
Yeah, a rabbi once said to me that if you put a jelly bean in a jar every time a couple has sex before they get married, and you take a jelly bean out every time they have sex after they get married, you end up at the end of your life with a lot of jelly beans in the jar. I know.
That's so sad.
I know. And it doesn't have to be that way, but it happens in a lot of marriages because, you just get lazy. And the main thing is to really commit to keeping things interesting. And that doesn't have to be swinging from the chandeliers crazy interesting, but just mixing it up, a different room, a different position. And honestly, if you want her to stay interested, you've got to seduce her mind. Women are like a slow burning stove and men are a microwave oven. And so you got to kind of stoke her flames all week long with romantic gestures and appreciations and connections and kissing without it leading anywhere, and cuddling her and making clear you don't want it to lead anywhere. And then when you want to have sex, instead of having to go from 0 to 60, she's already at 30.
That's
you
good.
know,
That's
and
very
she's
good.
already there. But new research actually is coming out now about the dopamine centers of the brain that are firing like crazy when you're in a brand new relationship, and you can't. It's like the addiction center of the brain. You can't, and it's connected to sexual desire. So if you're in a long-term relationship, looking for things that stimulate dopamine production in the brain helps. So what they found is novelty and adventure stimulates dopamine. So if you go on an adventurous trip together, or on a vacation to a new place, or try a new class together, that will often keep the spice going as well.
Do you remember that Marcello Mastroianni movie where he, in order to get sexually aroused for his wife, he'd come outside the building, outside the window, and hang from the window and almost kill himself, and then climb in to get himself going. That's where he could get
Geared up. Yeah, there you go. See, he was on to something. It's dopamine.
This is from Lisa 356. I've heard different answers to this question, but I want your professional opinion. When you start dating someone, how long should you wait before you sleep with them if you're pursuing a committed relationship with this person?
Boy, that's a tough one. You know what? There's no magic number, honestly. But what I would say, and I talk to a lot of men, you got to think of the hunter-gatherer caveman in men, right? Men want to feel, all people want to feel like they're special and unique. And what I hear from men is that even if they like a woman, if she has sex with him right away, he doesn't think she's a slut or is turned off by it. But he kind of feels like he's not so special. If she's doing it with me without even knowing me, she probably does it with lots of people. And that doesn't really, they like the hunt. They like a little bit of the chase. I'm not saying to manipulate them and hold out until they give you a ring.
Right.
But, you want to kind of pace yourself. And honestly, in today's day and age, it's tricky because of the STDs and safer sex. And if you're looking for a long-term relationship, I don't think it's outside the realm of what I would recommend to say that you want to wait to have sex with someone until you're only going to be having sex with each other for safety and for commitment purposes. So that doesn't mean you're committed into a relationship, but until further notice,
But as a woman, I feel the same way. I'm obviously married now, but when I was single and a man was after me, like right away, I just felt I was just another girl.
So he just wanted to have sex.
Yeah. So I didn't like him for that.
Yeah. You want to let the relationship build, and I honestly think it's a good idea to say from the beginning, I just make it a policy. I don't have sex with anyone until I'm clear that we're only going to be having sex with each other. That doesn't mean I need a major commitment or anything, but if one of us is going to want to have sex with someone else, we need to talk about it. And until then...
Well, yes, especially in this day and age. This is from Amy. Is a relationship doomed if the sex is bad and everything else is fine?
I don't know. This gets tricky, and women's biological clocks get in the way in this way all the time because he's exactly what you want. He'll be a great father, a great provider. He's a great guy. He's sweet. He's thoughtful. He's wonderful. I'm just not sexually attracted to him. The chemistry isn't there. And a lot of women settle for that because their biological clock is ticking. They don't feel like they have a lot of time. But I'm telling you, it does not work out in the long run. No. You have to have the chemistry. If you don't have the chemistry, that's what gets you through the hard times. The connection, the communication is crucial too, but if you don't have the chemistry, eventually it comes back to haunt you. Don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm 100% there. And I love that saying that if sex in your marriage is good, it's about 50% of your relationship. If it's bad, it's 100% of your relationship.
Yeah, that is true. That's a good
It's all
saying.
you think about.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've all been there. This is from Debbie Style. Do you have any tips on how to start experimenting with light bondage with your partner? Neither of us have done it before.
Well, congratulations, Debbie, for
what a great answer.
For exploring. You can start off very simply. Take a silk scarf or a tie or something and just tie your hands together, or a blindfold and tie. One cool thing for couples to do if you want to kind of spice things up is really get in touch with your senses. And the trust that's required between the two of you to tie yourself up, even in light bondage, it doesn't mean like you're in chains, but a little bit bonded, and you put on a blindfold, you'll notice that your other senses, once your sight is diminished, your other senses become much more alive, and it can be pretty erotic.
Wow, that's you're not stumped at all. That's so great. This is so much fun.
Ask me anything.
This is from Molly T. of Seattle. Do you think a large age difference can be problematic in relationships?
What's your age difference?
2 years.
That's nothing. I don't know. It depends. I don't think it has to be a difference. But if you have different goals in life, like if one of you is past their reproductive years and the other still wants to have children, or one of you still has a ton of energy and wants to go out all the time and the other is like done with that, then it can get to be a problem. But assuming you're both kind of on the same page and you think 20 years down the line and to the best of your ability you can predict that you're more or less going to be okay, then I wouldn't worry about it, because age is really a state of mind.
I have a couple of friends, both male where the man is older and one where the woman is older, and they've been married like 25 years. The one woman is now 75 and her husband has just turned 50. And I said, at last, he's getting older, right?
Yeah.
And they have a terrific marriage, really.
Yeah, it really is, especially today, because we're living such healthy, vibrant lives until the end of our lives, and living so much longer that it's not like you're, walking around with someone hunched over with a cane, you know?
This is from Marcy of Louisiana. I take too long to orgasm and my husband comes too fast. What can we do? Sometimes he makes sure I'm satisfied before we actually have sex. But I do want to come during sex too. Mm-hmm. I don't understand why the part where she has sex
so she's saying,
count as sex.
Right, well, what she means by sex, which many people mistakenly, is intercourse.
I see.
So what she's saying is that she can reach you. So Marcy, you're saying you can reach orgasm other ways. He will take care of you, but you want him to last long enough for you to reach orgasm during intercourse, which, by the way, only 30% of women do. So good for you if you can do that already. I'm assuming you can. But it depends. One thing to do is to beef up your arousal, like get you really aroused before you have intercourse. And then if he doesn't last as long, it's not as much of a big deal because you're already almost there. The other is to maybe incorporate a small little vibrator. There are even ones that he can wear that provide hands-free clitoral stimulation. So you can check that out. Or
hands-free.
But he's like wearing it while you're having intercourse. And then I just learned about this product. I don't know much about it, but they're doing clinical trials now, and it's available over the counter. It's a really cool mechanism the way it works. But it's this cream called Promescent. And it is used for men for early ejaculation, it makes them last longer, because instead of numbing the skin on the outside, which a lot of products do, which, like, what's the fun of that? Right. You're going to last longer, but you won't feel anything. Right, yeah. It goes into the skin, and it numbs basically the sensory nerves under the skin that communicate with the brain. So you have sensation you can feel things, but you can last basically as long as you want.
Until that kind of wears off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can last until you want to go, but
right.
it seems to be really effective, and they're doing more studies, and it's available now. I mean, I don't know where it's available. You can look online.
Yeah, and I always feel so bad when women say, I take too long.
Yeah. Yeah, you know what? That's a good point. I love how feminist you are.
Well, I mean, really. Yes. I mean, what's too long?
Yeah,
so
what's too long?
Yourself.
I mean, the average woman takes about 20 minutes to reach orgasm. The average man, 7.5.
Right.
So you got to close that arousal
gap.
That's
right. Yeah, so get him that cream.
Yeah.
Okay, this is from Kid Mom. I'm in my 50s, and I was always a very sexual person. I'm married to a great guy who I love, but our sex life is lacking. It hasn't always been this way, but in the last couple of years since I had a partial hysterectomy, I have very little sex drive. We've tried literature, movies, talking, and while they help, I rarely have an orgasm. What can we do? Can I just ask you a question, though? Is that true that if you have a partial hysterectomy or a complete hysterectomy, it changes your libido?
You know what? It can, for two reasons. One, and what she's saying is her libido and her ability to reach orgasm. So this will, something that I think will annoy you in the way it annoys me, is that we have unbelievable amounts of anatomical research on men, on the crucial nerves and blood vessels that are central to the sexual function. They now go in with robotic little surgical machines to do a prostate surgery on a man to make sure they're sparing every nerve. They haven't even mapped the nerves and blood vessels that are central to a woman's sexual function that are all in our pelvis. So they just go in and cut. And they don't, it's the luck of the draw, basically, whether you end up with sexual function or not, and the research kind of flushes that out on post-hysterectomy. So if before the hysterectomy you were having horrible pain, horrible bleeding, then your sex life may actually improve afterwards. But if you had a hysterectomy for some reason that wasn't necessarily affecting your sex life before, you may, once the uterus is removed, especially if you had vaginal orgasms with those deep pelvic floor contractions, your uterus contracts during orgasms as well. So if you had those before and now you no longer have your uterus, they feel much less intense.
Right.
In addition, if they accidentally cut some nerves and blood vessels that are central to your sensation, then you may lose some sensation and ability to reach orgasm.
This is a huge issue.
It's a huge issue. It makes me so mad. And it's something that nobody really talks about.
You have to.
Well, I do all the
Yes,
time, but
you
I'm
should.
not the one that can do the
write about
mapping.
it? Can you write about
I
it?
have in all of my books and articles, but no, it's and they're starting to do a little bit more of the research, but they still haven't.
Well, what
done
about if a
enough.
woman is about to have a hysterectomy?
Right.
Should she talk to her doctor about, I want to understand about, do you know what nerves you're cutting? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, they don't necessarily know. It's really about, and this has changed. Up until about 10 years ago, it was the most common operation performed on women. And that now it's, and she was just past her reproductive years, doesn't feel like having kids anymore, just take it out. And the other thing is once you take out the uterus, even though you still have the ovaries, and I think that's what she means by a partial hysterectomy, they atrophy without the uterus, and the ovaries are producing testosterone and estrogen, and they produce significantly less after a hysterectomy.
and you need that for sexual
You
libido.
need that for libido and sexual response and lubrication and everything else. So talk to your doctor. The main thing is not to get the hysterectomy unless you absolutely need
Absolutely.
it. And to talk to your doctor about the potential of hormone therapy, because it may be that testosterone, estrogen, if you're a candidate for that, would help alleviate some of these symptoms. And also there's been some research, even though Viagra really doesn't work for most women, it does seem to help with arousal for those women who have medical reasons why they're no longer able to get physiologically aroused. So if your blood flow isn't happening to the same degree, a medication like Viagra, if you talk to your doctor about it, may actually help with your arousal.
What I think is so interesting is that the stereotype is that women are not, as they get older, they're not as aroused as they used to be.
Mm-hmm.
But the Viagra's for men. Mm-hmm. So that's like a dirty little secret,
Yeah.
that men are having that same problem.
Right.
Right?
Well, so what happens with this is, men's interest doesn't necessarily go down, but their function does.
Well, that must be the same reason why women
Right.
do.
Part of it is the function,
Yeah.
and part of it is that we start out with less testosterone than they have, and testosterone is really key for desire. And so when a woman is aging, she starts off with a much smaller deck of testosterone,
Right.
and by the time we're 60, we have half the testosterone that we had when we were 20.
Right.
So it's slowly declining throughout our lifespan, and it can, it seems to be that women tend to have lower physiologic desire. People always say, doesn't a woman hit her prime in her late 30s? And she does, emotionally, intellectually. She's more in control of her body. She's more assertive. She's less apologetic. She's more comfortable in her skin, and she's ready to, go, and that's fabulous. But often physiologically, she's having those hormonal changes that can stand in the way.
So should she get some testosterone?
Well, every woman's different, and not everyone's a candidate for it, but it's definitely worth exploring with your doctor, to get your levels tested, to make sure you're going to someone who knows what they're doing. Don't just go to your OBGYN unless they really are experienced with it, because not everyone knows how to read the lab results, how to treat it. So you want to go to someone who knows what they're doing.
We just need more research for women's sexuality.
I know.
All right,
We
well,
do.
you're going to have to lead that.
All right, you
And
gonna
I'll
help
be
me?
right there. I'll be
All
right
right,
there with
good.
you. The intrepid photographer. My husband is constantly starting fights and pointing out my flaws and how I could do things better or how I don't do things well or not at all. How can I stay positive towards my children and being their teacher in a positive manner when I keep hearing negative things about me?
I know. I don't like that.
I don't
intrepid
either.
photographer. Yeah, I mean, this is something that's about your husband, not about you. Something is happening with him. Maybe it always was, but it sounds to me that you're probably in an emotionally abusive relationship.
Right.
Like, forget being positive towards your children. You are teaching your children, you are a model for your children of what a loving, respectful, intimate relationship looks like. And if they are growing up in a home where they're watching their mother get emotionally abused, that's teaching them, I mean, not only is that traumatic in and of itself, but it's really not setting a good model for them. And they're probably being emotionally abused as well. And that, to me, I mean, even though physical abuse can be much more physically dangerous, emotional abuse is extremely dangerous as well and shouldn't be taken lightly. And so I would really look into that. There are lots of websites and hotlines that really focus on emotional abuse. You need to get more information. You need to empower yourself around this and maybe get into some couples therapy or help him get into some therapy or anger management therapy. But the most important thing is that you don't have to drink his Kool-Aid. You know, what happens when you're being emotionally abused, and it sounds like it's happening to you, is that you start to believe the stories you're being told about yourself.
Right.
And it's not true. So you don't have to believe the stories he's telling you. And if you can find your center, get into therapy, get your power back, then you're going to be so much clearer and such a better model to your children than you ever could be. So it's not about changing him, it's about finding your own power.
But also the question that she's asking is, how can I stay positive? And that isn't the question to me, is how can you get your husband some help?
Yeah.
You know, it's not your job just to stay positive.
Right.
You've got to get your husband some help.
And get yourself some support.
Yeah, right. Because I mean, he can't.
He can't treat you that way.
No, he really can't. That's wife abuse.
Yeah.
Period. Okay, this is from Neil. I'm a gay male who's fallen in love with someone who has issues coming out to his family. I feel I'll always be hidden. It affects my ability to be really intimate with him because he's not whole and honest.
Yeah, that's a great question, Neil. It comes up all the time for me with gay and lesbian couples, and it honestly can be a deal breaker in the end, because what you want, if you are out and proud of yourself and feel secure and, you know, don't have those issues, and your partner still does, I mean, obviously sometimes people need more time. They need, you know, help and support in coming out. They may have a very strict, you know, punitive family. It might be really hard for them. But if this goes on indefinitely, you really want to think about whether this is the right person to be in a relationship with, because honestly, I don't see many relationships working well in the long term when one partner is out and the other isn't. In the short term, you know, you support each other through it and you may come out at different paces. But if this goes on indefinitely for a year, 2 years, then this may not be the right match for you.
You're always going to feel hidden.
Yeah.
And dirty and wrong and all that stuff that's no good for anybody.
No, and not true.
No. And this is from Katrina Ranclue. Hi, I'm a 26-year-old female and I'm a survivor of CSA, child sex abuse. I was abused by my father from about 2.5 to 3 until 5.5. He was arrested and prosecuted. I also went through 10 years of extensive counseling and therapy for the abuse, but never touched base on problems that could arrive in adulthood. Here's my issue. I hardly ever have any kind of sex drive. I've been with the same partner for 5 years, and for about the first 3 years our sex life was great, but then I started withdrawing from any sexual activity and I shut down. I feel now that it's more of a task or a chore than anything else. I know there's something wrong with that, and me as well. Do you have any advice or suggestions for this?
Yeah, you know, it's so tough. And I see this a lot in women who are victims of childhood sexual abuse. In fact, I did research on this for women who have low desire. When I compared women who have a childhood sexual abuse history and women who don't, what's your response when even a loved and trusted partner pursues you sexually and you don't want sex? All of them felt resentment. But the women who had the sexual abuse history felt anger and anxiety in response to their partner's sexual overtures, while the women who didn't felt guilt and shame. And the reason is that when your partner pursues you sexually, even though he's not your father, he's not your abuser, it feels too close to home. It feels like an unwanted approach that's taking your power away. And what I always explain to people who are victims of abuse is that you're like we all are, but you're like an onion, right? So you do that initial crisis therapy where you resolve it and you find your life and you find your power and you can be in a loving relationship. But then once you hit perimenopause, menopause, if your desire's going down or if you're having other emotional issues, you sometimes have to go back into therapy and peel a few more layers away and deal with that. So my suggestion would be to get back into therapy.
Okay. This is from Beatrice. My 10-year-old daughter is masturbating. Isn't that too young? Is it different for boys and girls? Does this mean she'll be sexually active sooner?
It's not too young. It's not necessarily different for boys and girls, and it doesn't mean she'll be sexually active sooner at all. In fact, I would argue the opposite. Because if she can figure out how her own body works and take care of herself, then it's not like she's making out with some boy and he starts to do something that feels good and she just kind of gets carried away and doesn't really know what's happening. She knows what's happening and she can take care of herself. Children they come into the world sexually, or sexual beings, and we condition it out of them, basically. So, you know, babies stimulate themselves. It's a way to soothe themselves. And for at your daughter's age, it's completely natural. Girls typically discover masturbation later than boys because their stuff is like right out there. It's easier for them to figure out. But it's good. It's healthy for her. It's not, you may need to educate her, like, this is something that's fine to do. I know it feels good, but it's something you do in private, not when company's over, not when, we're at the dinner table. So maybe give her some guidance around that, but normalize it. That's the best thing you can do for her because it's healthy.
Good. This is from Paige. When my gynecologist put me on birth control when I was a teenager, I didn't think twice about it. But lately I've been reading about the possible harmful effects it can have on women, particularly the increased risk of cancer. Is this true? Should I go off of it?
Right. Well, there's no real evidence that I have seen that highlights an increased risk for cancer. But here's the deal with birth control is that there are so many options out there. Women like yourself, very typically you were put on, you don't question it, or the doctor puts you on something, you don't question it. You have to be your own best health advocate. And for some women, they don't want to take hormones or the hormones aren't a good match. There are other options, like they now call it the IUC. It used to be the IUD, but intrauterine contraception is now even approved for women who haven't had children yet. It used to only be for women who had. And there's one that's hormone-free called Paragard, and it's 99% effective, doesn't have hormones, lasts up to 10 years, but you can take it out at any time and get pregnant if you want to, and if you're fertile, obviously. But the main thing is to know that you have options and to investigate those options, and that there are non-hormonal options out there, at least a few of them, if that's the direction you want to go.
This is from Deirdre in Florida. I recently went through a divorce, and I'm the mother of 2 small children. I don't really have time to date, but I miss the connection that comes with sex. Do you think friends with benefits is a good idea for grown-ups?
It's so tricky. I'm not opposed to friends with benefits, but I'll tell you this. The one thing we know is that when you have an orgasm, your brain gets washed in oxytocin, which is that chemical of attachment that breastfeeding mothers release. Now, men aren't as affected by this if they have significant levels of testosterone, because that kind of counteracts it, but women are. So you really don't want to have sex with someone that you're not prepared to have feelings for and emotions around, because if it's good sex, you're gonna. So you think you're going to go into this casual friends with benefits thing, and we're just going to have sex and friendship, but it really tends to get messy. One of you, typically the woman, starts wishing it was more, feels rejected when it's not, and then it becomes an emotional mess. I would say, more importantly, make time to date.
Yes. Very good. This is from Lindsay Bell. What are your thoughts on coping with the epidemic of antidepressants and their chilling effect on libido? Long-term prospects are discouraging.
Yeah, a lot of the antidepressants, especially the SSRIs, will have a negative effect on sexual libido. And of course, depression is even worse for your libido and other things. So it's first and foremost about treating the depression. But if you talk to your doctor, you can often adjust the dose. You can add in a combination of medications. There's some research, for instance, to show that Wellbutrin, which is an antidepressant, has fewer sexual side effects than some of the other ones. So you can try different ones. But it's tricky, because if you're depressed and you need that medication support, that's got to be the priority before your libido.
Right. This is interesting. I wonder, this is called she's called C. Shelby. Please share what you have found with men that are disinterested with sex due to the economic pressures of not having a steady income. How can you best help someone you're in a relationship with in this situation? Thank you, Lonely in Tinseltown.
Lonely in Tinseltown. You know what? I'm glad you brought that up, because that's something I see all the time. Women, their sexual libidos will typically be much more affected by their emotional state of mind than men's. The one thing that seems to most affect male libido is when they're feeling dissatisfaction with their work or economic situation, because that's like a core in our society, how men are raised, a core of how they see themselves as powerful and as men. And so if he's feeling inadequate financially or economically or work-wise, then he's going to withdraw sexually and maybe become depressed. And so the main thing is for you to be supportive of him, obviously, but also to make sure that he gets support, that if he is depressed, that he's getting treatment for that if he's having anxiety, that he's getting treated for that. And to recognize that this can be, and it's becoming, 1 in 5 men in this country have low libido now, or report low libido.
Because that many people are taking antidepressants?
Or because we are in an economic crisis.
Oh, I see.
You know what I mean? Just so many men are struggling with that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, this is from Bree. I'm getting the hook here, but I want to just get a few more in. This is from Bree, Tom in Nevada. I've heard that eating certain foods or not eating certain foods can make you taste better down there. Is there any truth to that? And how long does it take for it to take effect?
It doesn't take too long for it to take effect, and there is some truth. Pineapple, for instance,
is good
kiwi,
or bad?
Good. Pineapple and kiwi tend to be the best for taste.
So
for women and men. You eat it.
You eat it, okay.
And then about 6 to 12 hours later, well, you could. That's not what I was talking about.
Okay. I want to be sure we know what we're doing with the pineapple.
Eat it, rub it on yourself, eat it off each other.
So those are two. And is there anything that you should not eat?
Well, garlic. Well, you can eat whatever you want, but if you're concerned about odor or taste, and garlic is something that seems to negatively affect the taste.
All the way down there?
Everything you eat goes into your body and does go into your fluids. In fact, meat eaters tend to have much less attractive tasting genital fluids, men and women, than vegetarians.
Wow. Okay, just one more. Little B. What are some tips to spicing up the bedroom? Candles and music are nice. I tried whipped cream and chocolate-covered strawberries, and it made a giant mess on the sheet. Oh, we got to help Little B.
Yeah, well, it sounds like she's onto some things. I mean, I should send her
It could be a guy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, a Little B sounds like a woman. I don't know.
Okay.
But maybe it could be a guy.
Okay.
These are all good ideas. The main thing is what you're looking for. And one thing that, speaking of making a mess, like lay out an old sheet or a tarp or something on the bed. One thing you could do is I have all sorts of ideas. In fact, I wrote a book, I'm going to have a copy for you, called Loving Sex, which has all sorts of ideas for spicing things up. But I had one couple who I got doing erotic wrestling. They would slather each other in oil and then put old sheets on the bed or get on the floor and just wrestle all over each other and then get all aroused and have sex. Yeah, doesn't that sound all sorts of ideas?
Just a couple more. I know we have to stop, but wait. This is from Roger Walters. I was given androgel. Is that the best product?
There's no best product. That is an FDA-approved product for low testosterone, but there's so many of them FDA-approved for men. So it's really what works best for you, what your doctor thinks is the most appropriate for you, and androgel is a great option for lots of men. There's no, if your doctor thinks it's a good idea and it's working, there's no reason not to try it. If it's not working, talk to your doctor and try something else.
Okay, this one it's long, but I think a lot of people talk about stuff like this. So this is from a woman, of course, BTK in Brooklyn. Sex hurts for me, and I don't know why, especially when my boyfriend doesn't do oral first. Sometimes we just want to get right to it, but it's hard for me to enjoy it. Even with lube, it's just not that comfortable. I've gotten checked out. There's nothing wrong. No STDs, no UTIs. He's on the big side, but he's not so big that it should hurt this much. I'm very attracted to him, so that's not it. I find myself tensing up right before because I'm,
So you need more arousal. With arousal comes lubrication. That's why the oral sex helps, not only because it's providing a little bit of lubrication, but it's arousing you more. So you may just need to have more foreplay beforehand. Lubrications can work, but if you're anxious now, it sounds like now it's taken on a life of its own. You can also have something called vaginismus, which is an involuntary clenching of the muscles in the outer third of the vagina that can make sex painful. So it can take on a life of its own, and then I would suggest going to a gynecological physical therapist who can actually help you learn to control and relax those muscles pretty easily. But you want to have lots of foreplay, use lubricants, don't worry about it. Maybe if you're anxious about intercourse, take intercourse off the table for a while and do what I call Venus, very erotic, non-insertive sex for a little while, and then it'll kind of take some of the pressure off. And there's one product by KY called Liquibeads, and it's over the counter, and they're these little capsules that you insert into your vagina, and it lubricates the vagina for 24 hours. It's better than putting it on necessarily and then it dries up.
Yeah.
And if you're perimenopausal, like in your late 30s into your 40s, you want to go to your doctor because you may have declining estrogen levels that are causing the dryness as well.
Tell us 5 tips. My community loves tips. So
We all love tips.
five tips for a better sex life and relationship.
All right, let's see. One would be, if you're having sexual problems, don't sweep it under the rug. Go to the doctor if you're having physical issues with arousal or desire. Go to a therapist if it's a relationship issue. Don't just push it aside because it will take on a life of its own. The second is to really consider your birth control, especially if you're in your reproductive years and especially if you're getting into your 30s and 40s where you may have less testosterone, things are starting to change. Sometimes your birth control isn't necessarily the same good fit it was before. So talk to your doctor about what the options are and consider all the options, including the non-hormonal ones. In terms of the relationship, commit to making a sex date. Embrace it. Have it be something you look forward to. Flirt ahead of time. Get into it. Don't just think sex has to happen spontaneously, because it doesn't. Once you have kids and get busy in life, whether or not you have kids, you got to make the sex date once a week. Never let it go more than 2 weeks unless you're really ill or some major crisis occurs. Give your partner 5 genuine appreciations a day. It's amazing how far that goes, even for things they're supposed to do. If you just do that for 2 weeks, you will notice a huge change in the way your partner treats you. Because especially men, they just need sex with a partner who's into it and available, and to feel like they're doing a good job in the relationship, and they're happy. And then make a date with your partner, 15 minutes, even just once a week. Kissing, cuddling, and talking with no expectation of sex. Women really miss kissing because usually they only get kissed as part of foreplay or when he wants to get busy. So make a date to just kiss and cuddle, because that gets her fires burning. And most couples don't talk more than 15 minutes a week unless it's about the kids or logistics or life. So make that all encompassing. No technology other than music. Kiss, cuddling, talking, 15 minutes at least once a week.
Thank you. That's great. Well, that's it. We have to stop. I mean, I've got a zillion more questions, but we have to stop it. Time is up. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having
really,
me.
I'm so glad you finally did this with us.
Me too.
And
I'm glad
our
I could.
community is very excited. So thank you so much, Dr. Laura Berman, and we'll see you next time.